later on,
Mm-hmm.
if the person with the same neuron connections as you,
Mm-hmm.
it might be you. This is the Ellie
And Lee show.
Show.
Well, that's why I tend to like the scale of the Big Five.
Mm.
Because it's like, okay, this is who you are currently. You know where you stand, then you know what to work on.
Yeah.
Because like the questions that I obviously kind of had after doing the MBTI is that like, okay, I'm being categorized as this, therefore should I be doing this kind of job? Would this suit me because I'm this category of personality?
I guess MBTI is kind of something that your personality wouldn't change.
No, your personality would change, but then the thing is when you define something, often people can just stick to what they know.
Oh, yeah.
So like when I was younger, that was the way I kind of saw it. So like if I saw, oh, okay, I'm this kind of personality type under the MBTI, then it was like, oh, okay, therefore these are the kinds of jobs I should look for because my personality is like this.
Okay.
I would do best in it.
I kind of think that that's valid.
It's valid in some ways, but like I think, yeah, it's valid in some ways, but you do get situations where you can have an introvert, let's say, being able to become someone famous on YouTube or something like that.
Okay.
Because they might be getting the same kind of popularity that you would be if you were a movie star, but then they're doing it in a way where, you know, they're not specifically interacting with other people. But then if you're thinking of yourself as not that kind of personality type, then it'll kind of dissuade you from trying those sort of things. So I think the thing for me is just I prefer it to be a more open sort of analysis. So leaving more for you to discover than, you know, just having multiple things.
Okay. So let's get into the book.
So from reading the first 2 chapters, was there anything that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I didn't really think deeply before. But like in the school, you learn about natural selection, right?
Yeah.
Natural selection is about the individuals, which is the strongest, will only survive, right?
Yeah.
I thought, oh, nowadays in the world, like it doesn't seem like it. I mean, like even in personality, it's really diverse and different.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that how the book was explaining the natural selection. From the book, it says some traits can be strong in some situation, but not in other situations.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. What do you think?
So yeah, I think the thing is that, you know, when it comes down to humans, there's so much complexity and obviously so much that we don't understand. So it's not just the environment that we live in, it's also the social interaction or the social landscape that we occupy. So there's so many factors that, you know, we're not looking at or we don't really take into consideration. So to me, you'd end up with such a wide variety of different personalities or different or different levels on those traits. And, you know, from reading the book again, it said that during some periods, it's better to have certain types of traits than others.
Yeah.
You know, like if business is really competitive, then it's better to be more disagreeable. You know, so you can fight for having your product or your idea pushed through sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then that's only one aspect of life, you know, business. Because there's not only business, there's your family interactions, there's your friend interactions. You know, there's people that you meet day to day. So there's so many things or so much complexity that just having one dominant seems kind of irrational to me. So just to touch on another point, when you look at it, I think also life has progressed to the point that it's not too difficult to have an average life. You know, obviously we all have struggles and there's, you know, there's things that are difficult to do, but to be alive, i.e. just having a place to stay, having food to eat, you know, those very fundamental things, these days it's not difficult to achieve. But if you maybe look like a couple thousand years ago where we had to be, fighting for food. We didn't have the agriculture, so we had to be hunting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then I think personality would have been more distinct. Yeah, because the fundamentals are kind of catered for to some degree. Then there's a higher level of consideration of where your personality is going to end up being successful or not successful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. From the book, it also gives about like specific example, but using animals, right?
Yeah. I think that's just to give you like a very simplistic view of it. Because if it was only talking about humans, then, like I was saying, you can't account for all the complexity. But then at a different level, animals are more simple beings. So you can directly, or it's a lot easier to look at the differences. If you're enjoying this video so far,
please like and subscribe.
So yeah, what I got out of the first 2 chapters was that there's selection due to environment. So it's kind of what I was talking about just now. But the book shows the example of the same species of bird, but being geographically separated. So like living on different islands. So depending on, if it's a rainy season or if it's a dry season, if the seeds that are available are, big and hard to chew or small and easy, then those birds tend to grow different size and shape.
It's not about they tend to grow, but it's just observed that maybe let's say if environment you are in has the seed which is too hard to chew, species with sharp teeth have higher chance of survival. So it's not that they changed over like they were growing, but that like the species with that trait is more capable.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was over a matter of generations, I guess. So then that was looking at the whole natural selection side of things.
Yeah.
But then to me it does work in the real world to some degree, because to me in the real world, those that thrive under a certain environment. So let's say if it's a situation where resources aren't easy to get, or maybe jobs are really hard to find. Yeah, it tends towards those that put more effort into going out and getting a job. And, if they get a good job, then they are more likely to find a partner and have kids, thus passing on their genetics. Yeah, the way you can kind of see it, like, I would say it's a good thing for us being here, is that technically we are here because we're genetic successes.
What? Oh, like from our ancestors.
Yeah, from our parents and their parents.
But I really wonder why people need to pass their genes to their offsprings. Why? What's the meaning? It's interesting. It's programmed, I think. It is instinct.
I think the thing is that organisms want to survive. If you're alive, you want to live. Even the most simplest organisms, like an insect or a mouse or humans, there's an innate... The why, I don't know.
So that might be a little bit weird. Do you remember I talked about the brain connection and then the ego? We die, right? But how do you define yourself?
In what?
I define myself as the brain connections. You get input from outside world, right?
Yeah.
And then you process it with your brain. And then like, as the book says, neuron connections can control how you react.
Okay.
Later on, if the person with the same neuron connections as you, it might be you. Do you get the concept? So like maybe like if you pass your gene one day, maybe like 10,000 years later, you might be you again.
So it's like saying you are some version of your ancestor. Which is kind of true.
Is it?
Yeah, you do share genetics with your ancestors. So to some degree you are a newer version. So like the one kind of experiment that I would want to see being done is that it would be interesting to do a country by country experiment of personalities to see
it's really different. Yeah.
Yeah, to see if this might be the case, looking at the macro level. So obviously each individual has their own personality, but I wonder too, due to the country's laws and the country's environments, do people of that country, in aggregate, do they have also a certain personality trait? Like if you're thinking of America or something,
they tend to be
yeah.
extrovert.
So I wonder if it's just the people that you end up meeting, because extroverts are people that you tend to meet and think, oh, they're rather extroverted. Or is it actually that because of the environment in America, more extroverts kind of thrive in that sort of setting?
It's hard to become an introvert there because like everyone is, not everyone, but like they think that introvert isn't like interesting or whatever.
But the thing is, like, there's also situations. Well, yeah, here's the issue though, is that if they are introverts, how do you know they're there? Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's why it'll be interesting, like, if there has been enough similar studies.
There would be.
Similar studies on the same sort of personality scale. So like the Big Five or whatever the case may be. It'd be interesting to see the comparison based on country. Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, then we can discuss it
later.
Yeah.
Some people might think how only 5 aspects can explain person's personality, right? Or is it even accurate? What do you think?
Well, I think from reading the book, it showed more that it wasn't specifically about finding 5 personalities. They didn't start with saying, okay, let's choose 5 out of however many we get. I think you would be better to explain that technical sort of thing because I've never studied this stuff. But like where they found... I never
studied too.
Okay. But it's where they found more statistical significance were like these 5 things by looking just at the data were isolated. So it's like when they were looking at it, these 5 things came out of the data that they were analyzing.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was chosen. I think it was more just it came out of what they were studying.
I usually thought that making generalization like this was meaningless because it seems always everything seems like case by case.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of grateful that if we all say, yeah, that depends on the situation. Like who else cannot say? Everyone can say that. So like just the effort of generalization, I think like that's something I am really grateful about. And then...
But I think that's also something that's important in just the study of science. You know, again, I'm not a scientist, but the thing is, like, when you look at physics and stuff like that, you can't start with a complex problem and expect to get any meaningful answer from it until you understand, you know, the more simple things that interact with it. Like when you look at, you know, something as simple as gravity, when you look at something like motion, you can't consider everything that influences motion. You can't now consider, oh, is the color of the apple falling from the tree, does that affect motion? Yeah, I'm just giving like an outlandish example. You can't consider the color of the apple, whether you were happy or not when you saw the apple, that sort of things. You have to kind of, you know, sift through and look at, okay, can I explain this very basic phenomena, or can I do it in a way where if I test, I can gain some kind of insight from it? Yeah. Oh yeah, one more thing that I wanted to note about it is that if you look at any kind of simulation, to conduct a simulation, you have to simplify the problem, right? Like even if you look at a game, you have to simplify the mechanics of how it's going to work. And it's never going to be ideal. If you can replicate the problem, then you can find something more about it.
Yeah, agreeable. So from next video, we're talking about big 5 aspects. Right?
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just talk about the biological cause.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna talk about brain connection or genetic reasons why like we ended up being like this.
Mm-hmm.
And also we're gonna compare from like not really comparison. The explanation in Jordan Peterson version is like more specific, I would say, right?
Yeah, so he takes the big 5 aspects and then he breaks it into each one into 2. So you end up with 10 things.
Yeah, so we also want to add that contents to the video. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So we actually really enjoy talking about these kinds of things. So I hope you guys would stick around and, you know, discuss with us as well as listen to more on these kinds of topics.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps us out.
Thanks for watching.
See you.